Now, 1998, you've been there since 1998. Did you enter into your project there as an organic vineyard?
We were not organic straight away,
Right.
because I mean, in the beginning, especially going to a foreign country, to a foreign continent, to a foreign climate, in a
Yeah.
sense, everything was new, and you
Yeah, of
know, you
course.
look around and how do you do things, and I mean, organics was not a big thing in New Zealand at the time.
It certainly is
I
now.
know it's called the clean country, but it's organics has only come slowly, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put it didn't exist so much at the time, and we then started kind of working with organic principles, but without being certified, i.e., to allow us that if we had a really bad vintage, that would allow us to maybe use a product to spray that we usually wouldn't use.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But
understand.
then we also had to realize that playing the game like, oh, we are kind of organic, but we are not certified. It's like being half pregnant.
I knew you were going to say that.
Doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because I've seen some of our colleagues, you know, like a lot. I've seen like, oh yeah, we work after organic principles, but then you see the odd herbicide spray,
Yeah.
you know, and you go like, yeah, how does that fit together? And on top of that, as we learned about, you know, like when I was still going to university, glyphosate, you know, that was the go-to herbicide, and it's not hurting anybody. It's almost healthy, you know, you can drink it. And now they realize, oh,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
actually causes cancer.
Yeah.
What a surprise! So yet again, another good reason why we became certified organic again, because then there's no excuses. You have to have an audit. It's everything is checked. It's an international certification, and it's of course very costly. I mean, with the audit and the membership and whatever, I think it costs us, and on top of the work we have to do, but just the being member of the club and doing the audit costs us like some $10,000 per year or something like that. So that's a big cost, of course, but it's important to do it properly and not just like, oh yes, we are using some organic practices, but not always. No, it doesn't work that way. You're either organic or you're not. And we basically started our conversion in 2009 or 10, and every vintage. Then it takes a while. It takes like 3 to 4 years in conversion. And our first fully certified organic vintage was then in 2013. And yeah, since then we are fully certified organic.
Now I have to ask, what are the biggest viticultural hazards in Martinborough for growing Pinot?
Well, luckily, looking at disease, actually, it's not too bad because it's such a dry environment. Like powdery mildew, we almost never have an issue with. The only thing is powdery, but they're inorganics. You know, inorganic sulfur. You know, basically does the job, and that's pretty much all we spray. You know, so there's nothing else. The bigger problems are being organic is of course. The undervine, you know, the weeds that grow there.
Yeah, of course.
The people using herbicide, of course, easy job, you spray and then it's quiet. But coming back to healthy soil, you know, all the people who use the Roundup and what have you, there's a lot of, how you call it in English, moss, you know, the green stuff kind of growing,
which
is usually a sign of dead soil. And that's something you don't want to have, you know. So we use all sorts of machinery of how do you call them in English? You know, like it's the German word would be Flachschar, whatever that would be in English.
Flachschar in English. Hold on.
It's kind of a knife that runs underneath the wines, but there's a little thingy that as soon as the wine comes, it flips back and then goes out again after the wine. So it cuts the root of the grass or whatever is growing under the vines. And then we also have some brown thingies that turn over the soil there. So basically, it's a mechanical way of turning over the grass that grows under the vines.
Yes. Yep.
But that all works fine if you have a very sandy kind of soil, but we don't have that. And we have a lot of rocks in the soil as well. So,
Yeah,
in our case, especially in the first years, till the machinery found all the rocks under the vines, there's a lot of welding and mechanics coming in and fixing machinery again to get it going again. And it's of course a lot slower than just spraying a herbicide. But for soil health, you bring air into the soil, you turn over the soil. You're not killing the weeds, you're just holding them down. It's a much healthier soil, of course, in the end. But yeah, it's extra work. And the biggest two issues aside of that we have is late frost in springtime.
Yes.
Be it September, October, just after bud burst. That's not an organic issue. It's just if you have a frost and the small shoot is dying off, then that was it for the season, or for the next one even too. So we have 3 wind machines in the vineyards that basically the idea is they go in a circle of 360 degrees and they drag down the warmer inversion layer.
Yes.
Cold air on the ground. You could use a helicopter as well, but how to put it? There had always been a sudden shortage of helicopters in New Zealand when there was a frost night. And I remember one of the early years, we were going to book a helicopter, but the standby fee was $10,000, and then every hour of running was another $2,500. So a night can become quite expensive. But then again, those wind machines cost $80,000, so that's not really cheap either. But at least once you buy them, you have them, and they are there. So if you have a surprise frost night, and they should switch on automatically, but usually we check, of course, but at least you have them. And that so far, touching wood, we didn't have any big frost damage ever since. And the other big limiting factor in New Zealand is that unfortunately our bird life found out that grapes taste quite nice.
Especially when they're perfectly right.
Well, they don't even need to be perfectly right. Behind me, you see 2 cherry trees. Since 20 years, we have cherry trees. Have I ever eaten a cherry of those trees? No. Well, or maybe 2 or 3, because they eat them when they're green already, and we always meant to put a net on top, but by the time we want to put the net on, the cherries are gone already. And it's the same with the grapes. Here in the background, you can see it's a very small block of the vineyard in front of our kitchen, basically. And one year we decided, because we ran short of, so we have to net everything basically for the birds. We didn't have enough netting, so we didn't net that part because we thought we can go out there, clap our hands, and chase away the birds. That part looked like a machine harvester went through. There was not one berry left. There were only like the stems, but no berries anymore. So especially in dry years when the birds don't find so much food, it's quite dramatic. So so usually in February, still early, like 4, 5, 6 weeks before harvests. It's basically just when they start turning color, we already have to put the netting on, because otherwise you will have some feathered friends in the vineyard.
I can
reducing
imagine.
Even more.
So, Kai, it would be remiss of me not to ask you about a certain subject matter that's still circling the globe, but you appear to be living a rather normal life down in New Zealand right now. How has the ongoing, for us, COVID pandemic impacted you at Schubert?
Well, it's almost a bit embarrassing to say, because we live a pretty normal life in New Zealand. New Zealand has managed to stop the virus at the border. So yes, people being New Zealanders or permanent residents can still come to New Zealand. For visitors, the border is closed, so it's very limited number of people can come in. But all of them who come have to go into a managed isolation of 14 days. So at the beginning, it was a bit shaky to organize, but then again, hey, we didn't plan the whole thing, did we? But now it works pretty well, and we were still able to keep the virus away. So in New Zealand, there's no restrictions at all. There's no wearing masks unless you're on a domestic flight as a precaution. Restaurants are open,
Wow.
sports games and music festivals, everything is happening. So that is that. And on top of that, because the Kiwis, they love traveling, but at the moment they can't. And especially in our case, because we live Martinborough so close to Wellington, so the Wellingtonians on the weekends, what do? I mean,
they drive over the hill to Martinborough.
Highway number 1 and highway number 2. Highway number 1 is at the west coast, but usually it rains on the west coast, so you don't go that way. So you come to the east coast, which is us, and look, there's Martinborough, a wine village. I mean, we usually have 2 big weekends in the year, which is Christmas and Easter, which in our tasting room or cellar door, people are, it's packed. Now, with COVID, the whole winter, every weekend.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So aside of the lockdown, so we had the tough time of roughly 5-6 weeks of lockdown and strict restrictions.
Yeah.
But after that, things have been really, really busy here. So looking at it from an economic point of view, dare I say, I mean, it has not been such a bad year, really.
It's interesting you say that, Kai. It's interesting you say that, because anecdotally speaking, with some Kiwi winemakers that were more they were at the kind of boutique end, and without their international visitors that would normally come through, they were finding it was quite difficult to sell, say, a $60 bottle of Pinot.
Yeah. I mean, it's true that especially Martinborough has benefited from the situation, because
right.
I mean, Martinborough, a small wine village. I mean, the Wairarapa as a whole region represents only like 2% of New Zealand's wine production.
Yeah,
so it's tiny. And Martinborough has maybe, how many wineries are we? Maybe 20, 30, 35 wineries.
So do you think your proximity, do you think your proximity to Wellington has really helped that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's because if you're another region, I mean, for example, we've seen Queenstown or Central Otago was suffering because Queenstown has so many international visitors. And even so, it got a little bit better because now all people I mean, the Kiwis are traveling extensively now in New Zealand. I mean, I did a little South Island trip last year in November. Sometimes it was a tough time to find accommodation because it was all fully booked. Kiwis traveling. So Queenstown is not doing as bad anymore as initially, but then there are places that really were kind of full of foreign tourists, like I guess towards Milford Sound and Te Anau and places.
Christchurch would be the place I would think of.
Yeah, or I mean, even Christchurch. I mean, when I stayed a couple of nights there as well, and they said they're fully booked on the weekends because again, New Zealanders, Aucklanders, and whoever they're coming over the weekend to have a look. So that keeps them at least going. But the week itself is very quiet, of course, because that's the international travelers traveling. So there's certainly parts of tourism that are suffering badly, and probably you don't want to own an airline at the moment either.
Yeah.
But I guess Air New Zealand, in a sense, is doing quite well because I mean there's no restrictions on domestic flights, so they are flying up and down the country, left, right, center. All the time, and well, looking at what they charge, they probably make more money with that than they did when they were
flying internationally.
Competition with other airlines on the long distance routes, for example. So, but it really depends where you are, and I must say, funny enough, also, actually, I'm hiding a bottle here as well, but it's standing in the sun now. um, uh, uh, our international markets are doing quite well too. I mean,
Right.
there's we're actually quite strong in exporting. We export probably 80% of our wines. I mean, this last season probably less exports and a bit more domestic. But it's especially those, I call them the holiday markets, that suffer. Like, I mean, our export to Thailand, Vietnam,
Yes,
Maldives.
yeah, I understand. Yeah, yeah.
There's not much happening there, of course, because it's not locals drinking the wine. It's mostly tourists going to these places to wine. But on the other hand, the traditional markets, like, I mean, UK, Sweden, Germany, Japan, Korea, what did I forget? Russia. Russia offered, I think, twice as much this year, or last year, better to say, than usually. Probably the Russians think drinking New Zealand wine gets rid of the virus. I don't know. I mean, it's well, how to put it? The virus has not stopped people from drinking wine.
Yeah. Hasn't stopped me from drinking wine, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's that's if my theory is right. Of course, it didn't help the restaurants. You know, people maybe even upgraded their wine because when they went to the restaurant before, wouldn't order our wine because in the restaurant it was suddenly a step too high in price.
Yeah.
But now they rather sit at home because they can't go to the restaurant in the first place. And from the shop, our wine is still cheaper than what they would have bought in the restaurant.
Yep.
So they could upgrade the wine at a lower price, and that's why maybe more was selling. So I mean, that's my wildest theory, but who knows?
No, I get you. I definitely get you there. Kai, I didn't realize we'd end up speaking for 45 minutes or something like that.
People have said that before, that I talked too much.
No, not at all. Kai, thank you very much for joining us at Good Food Revolution today. We look forward to catching up with you in the future. And I have to say, you've kind of made my day with this. After that disturbing day in the US, this a glass of this has definitely kind of calmed my nerves.
I should watch further into the news now, but yeah. But I mean, it was great to talk to you, and I hope we can repeat it in real life one day when we can, well, sit in a plane again and without too much trouble come to different places and do things in real life.
I would love that. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Well, this evening, it's your afternoon, right? So.
Well, it's what's the time now? It's 12:45 in the afternoon.
There you go. Take care. Stay safe. Bye for now.
Same to you. Bye-bye. Thanks very much. Cheers. Cheers from New Zealand.